The Secrets of Movies and TV Shows is brought to you by the StarQuest Podcast Network and is made possible by our many generous supporters. If you'd like to support the podcast, please visit sqpn.com/donate. You're listening to The Secrets of Jurassic Park. Hi, I'm Don Bettinelli, and you're listening to The Secrets of Jurassic Park, where we're going to discuss the hidden layers and deeper meanings of this awesome dinosaur movie from the 90s. And joining me today on the panel are Father Michael Gossett. Hi, Father Michael. Great. And Thomas Sanjurjo.
You got it.
I got it this time. And so, actually, I got to remember, like, last time we were together, I don't think I actually introduced, like, who you are or where you're from. Father, tell us just a little about yourself, who you are, where you're from, just a little bit about that.
Yeah, I'm a priest of the Diocese of Steubenville, Ohio. I'm in a parish, I'm in a high school, and I'm the vocation director.
Awesome. And Thomas, where?
I am a Catholic father of 7 from the Tampa area, and I also am a teacher at our local parish school.
Awesome. Okay, great. So, and that just helps people to get to know you a little bit. Who these guys are talking about these things. But before we get into talking about the movie, I want to quickly just promote another podcast that we just launched called The Secrets of Star Trek, and it's a lot of fun. If you've heard any of our other Secrets of, like, Doctor Who, you know what to expect. It's 3 super nerdy Trekkies, and we love Star Trek, and what do Star Trek fans love to do but get together and talk about Star Trek? So The Secrets of Star Trek is, it's me, Jimmy Aiken, and Father Corey Stika. Each week, we have an episode where we talk about something having to do with Star Trek, and we're kind of going almost systematically through Trek. So one week will be an episode from the original series, the next week from Next Gen, another week will be from one of the movies, and then we'll kind of branch off at times, and we got plans to talk about fan conventions, because I've been to Star Trek fan conventions, and they're a lot of fun.
Awesome.
We'll talk about Galaxy Quest, which is in a satirical homage to Star Trek, and that sort of thing. It's going to be a lot of fun, so I hope you will subscribe if you go to sqpn.com/Trek, or search for Secrets of Star Trek on any of the podcast aggregators out there. It's in all of them. So that said, let's get to this. So Jurassic Park, which has become a mega franchise for Universal Pictures, started in 1993 with this film directed by Steven Spielberg, based on a book written by Michael Crichton. And it's just to kind of, we're talking about Jurassic Park because Jurassic World Kingdom something or other, Jurassic World 2 came out this past summer. We want to talk about that eventually, but we thought we'd kind of go back a little bit first and talk about where it came from. And it came from this great movie. Like I said, it came out in 1993, and it had a 3D re-release for the 20th anniversary in 2013. So it's been out for 25 years. So
Wow.
guys, I don't know if you're as old as I am. I saw this as a college student when it came out. Did you guys see this in theaters when it came out? Thomas?
I did see it in theaters when it came out. I was in high school.
Okay.
And I remember I went to see it when we were overseas. Not overseas, I say. We were in Puerto Rico. And so it came out a little bit later, but we were there. And I was sitting by my mom, who is not very good with scary movies, but she didn't really know what she was in for. And there was a distinct part of the movie where she put her hand on my knee and squeezed so hard that she left a bruise.
How about you, Father Michael?
Yeah, so I was in 5th grade when I saw this, and it is. I love this movie so much. It's probably my earliest going to the theater to see a movie that I really wanted to see memories. And so I remember being scared, but being obsessed with it for a long time.
That reminds me, when I distinctly remember this when I first saw this, there was a dad or maybe it's an uncle or somebody and about an 8-year-old boy sitting behind me. And at that scene where the T-Rex chomps the lawyer which that's everyone's favorite scene, where the lawyer gets eaten by the dinosaur. I hear him sort of lean over to the boy and whisper loudly enough for me to hear, "Now you know what Barney's really like."
Oh my gosh.
And I'm thinking to myself, you just bought yourself a lifetime of therapy.
Yeah, my goodness.
I thought that was the funniest thing at the time. I almost burst out laughing. So, let's talk a little bit about the background of the movie, like where it came from. Like we talk about it came from a Michael Crichton book, but as I was doing the research, I found out that this was actually originally Crichton wrote a screenplay treatment, then the book, and then he sold the rights to the book, and then was hired to write the first screenplay for this. So this is really like right out of Crichton's mind, or like right almost from Crichton to the screen in many ways. But the book and the movie differ in a number of ways, and for me, the most significant one is the character of John Hammond. Now, have either of you read the book?
I did, yeah.
Okay. So in the book, Hammond comes across as he's really a villain. I mean, he's greedy and dismissive and condescending and arrogant. I mean, all the things you'd expect from someone who defies the laws of nature and goes forward like this. Whereas in the film, John Hammond is a kindly elderly grandpa who's almost clueless in his the way that he's, I'm trying to think, idealistic in a sense.
Yeah, he's almost childlike in the way that he's like, oh, I brought the dinosaurs back and it's so awesome.
Right. And that's, to me, that's one of the defining characteristics of this movie, where none of the humans in this really come across as a bad guy, except for maybe Nedry, who just is sort of a bumbler. He's not a villain per se. He's just sort of the dummy whose mistake causes things to happen. And so I found that kind of an interesting way for Spielberg to approach this. What do you think of that?
Yeah, there's no real villains in this movie. The dinosaurs are doing what dinosaurs do.
Right.
And, so you can't blame them for that. But yeah, like you said, even the people, any mistakes that are there are just like very human mistakes, whether it's greed. And even John Hammond, there's certainly a lot of, I guess you could say, like hubris of doing and daring to do what he does, but he does it really benevolently, and he wants to share this great thing. So yeah, I really enjoy that. It's not really like humans versus monsters; it's humans versus just the mess that they made and having to escape from that.
Right.
Yeah, I wonder how much of it was just the actor that they chose to play the part too, because there's a lot of really dark spots that could have gone very bad if you watch really closely the spots with John Hammond, and it's just the difference in the actor having that childlike look at the dinosaurs versus having the dollar signs in his eyes when he sees people amazed by them.
Right.
And it could have gone a very different way depending on who they had play that part.
Even that scene where where Nedry is sort of needling him for more money again, and he's sort of he really kind of turns into the boss. Like, look, I'm not giving you any more money. Like, that could come across as just the greedy jerk. But even then, because he's built up this capital of the kindly grandpa, you're like, oh, Nedry, you're bad for making Grandpa angry. Like, it's just sort of this
Exactly.
this moment. So that was the book, and then Steven Spielberg came into this at one point. They had kind of shopped around to different studios, and Universal picked it up for Spielberg to make the movie. And he was convinced. I find this interesting. He was convinced to make it by Universal as a condition for him then after making Schindler's List, which is a movie that was very personal to Steven Spielberg and one of the greatest movies of all time, in my opinion. And so I found it was very interesting that this was sort of that condition to make that, which is just an interesting character moment for Spielberg.
Yeah, I like the fact that I, because Spielberg, you always think about yeah, he makes big movies, but he also has a message. Like he always tries to tie a message into the bottom of the movie, and this one's really no different. And there's so many things you can walk away from this movie with, but like you guys were pointing out with the lack of a real villain, and then on top of that, the message of life, and how life is going to find a way, and how meaningful life is, even if we were the ones that brought it back.
Right.
It's there now, and it needs to be respected for what it is. And that message just trails through the whole movie, and it's very subtle but really, really well done.
And in fact, I think to take it a step further, it's also, life is important, and hold on to the things that are really important in life. Like
Right.
what's real. At one point, Ellie, kind of has to almost shake a Hammond and say, your grandchildren are out there. The people we love are out there. That's what's important right now. And it's a revelatory moment for him, I think, to kind of, oh, right. That's my priority, is my grandchildren, the people I love. And from that point on, he's almost a different guy in his aim. He's no longer trying to save the park. He's trying to save the people.
Right.
And I think that's a real Spielbergian moment.
Even the subplot of so Dr. Grant goes from kind of like not being interested in children. He kind of horrifies that kid with that story at the beginning.
Love that.
Wonderful. But by the end, and on the helicopter off the park, he's got Lex and Tim cuddled up against him. He took care of them. He was a father to them. Their real father's not there, and he took care of them all through that terrible situation. So I think that's like a kind of an affirmation of that message, that he went from just being kind of caring about something that was dead and history into investing himself into these living people, and
right.
So it happens for him too.
It's a hallmark of Spielberg, the way he focuses on fatherhood, children and their fathers, like whether it's E.T., who the Elliot doesn't have a father, and sort of creates a bond with E.T., a relationship like that. But even in his other movies, there's often this fatherhood message, this children, or just children and the adults who love them. That's that message, and that really comes across here. And it's different from the book in a way. I mean, whereas in the book, I think Grant, he actually had an affinity for children, and this Spielberg kind of changed a little bit to let that affinity grow. I have to say, you mentioned that scene with the kid at the beginning where he kind of explains, what a velociraptor would do to you. I just love that, and it kind of it's actually several points in this movie where they have this masterful storytelling where they have all this exposition about necessary details. Like the book Jurassic Park is like 3 inches thick, because it's all exposition. It's all this science and explanation of what's going on with these dinosaurs. And yet in the movie, they condense it all into these little vignettes, whether it's that explanation of what a velociraptor will do to you, or it's the cartoon in the ride that explains how they got the dino DNA. Yeah, exactly. Which is great. Very, very Walt Disney-like. I come back to that Walt Disney-like thing. So I got to say, so he does a great job of giving us tons of exposition without slowing down the movie. This movie goes at a breakneck pace. It's 127 minutes, but it goes by like 30.
It never stops. It really doesn't.
Yeah, and that's another hallmark of Spielberg. It's like Raiders of the Lost Ark. It just goes by like that. Like it's just nonstop from the beginning. So let's talk a little about the dinosaurs themselves. This is a groundbreaking movie. At first they were going to go with stop motion, because that was the way you did this sort of animation, just sort of like the Harry. Oh, what's his name? Oh, I lost the guy who did the old. What was the one? The Greek move with the skeletons.
Jason and the Argonauts.
Jason the Argonauts. Just like kind of that stop motion where they look very obviously like models. And there was gonna be they were gonna do that until they realized it wouldn't be fluid enough. It wouldn't look real, and they went with CGI, which was a huge risk. Was not quite there yet. In other movies, those were the first large scale uses of it, and where they mixed live action with graphics, people graphics. They did have some full scale animatronics, like the T-Rex, when they were next to the T-Rex paddock with the electric trucks that they were riding in. That was animatronic, and it was so effective. And in fact, one of the things that makes this movie great is how real the dinosaurs were, especially the T-Rex and the Velociraptors.
Yeah, and well, I think there was a lot of stuff that they did. And this is something I really miss a lot of in more modern movies, because they're starting to rely too heavily on the CGI. And there were so many things that they did to build that tension without the dinosaur on the screen, because they really had to invest. We got 10 seconds of this dinosaur on screen. It needs to look good before it even gets there. And,
right.
Like the little water cup with the drops where the T-Rex is coming
perfect.
out. Such a great trick of just getting you to buy in and suspend the disbelief. And you go back and watch it now, and the graphics still hold up pretty darn well.
Yep.
But they're starting to tell their age, and you can start to see a difference in because they had to use really dark lighting to hide some of the issues and different things like that. And it helped with the mood of the movie. But as a person who does some computer graphics myself, I can watch these things and go, oh, okay, I see why they had to have the rain and the T-Rex in the dark, because that hides a lot of stuff that you would otherwise have to deal with somehow.
Right, that animation sequence at the first time they see the dinosaurs, which is an iconic scene, by the way. I mean, it hits on your memory. But when you see that now, it looks very much like animation.
Right.
The later scenes, it got a little better, but because that was during the day. But even when the T-Rex was chasing the Gallimimus, and that was daytime, wow, it was like if you slow it down, you can kind of see how the tree is slightly out as it rocks, the tree they hide behind, as the Gallimimus jump over it, how it's slightly out of sync with them, but it's not perfect. But yeah, I mean, it's especially for the time. But I see what you're saying. Like, they had to hide a lot of the strings, so to speak, in the dark and in the rain.
And it really works. I mean, you compare this to something like The Phantom Menace or something like that, that this looks 10 times better than a totally CGI made years later. And I think just kind of that idea of hiding it, and it makes me think of Jaws, which is probably what he was going for, is that you don't see the shark a whole lot, but it feels really real. And that T-Rex feels really real by the way they deploy it.
Yeah, there's something to be said for the when you don't have the ability to just do whatever you want. Like nowadays, like you watch like a Guardians of the Galaxy, for example, like they can do anything in that. Like if it seems like, they can create anything. And as much as I actually really enjoy Guardians of the Galaxy, but it's just there isn't the same sort of suspense and holding back. Like actually, to compare this to Ready Player One, a movie we talked about in this podcast a few weeks ago, also a Spielberg movie, because he didn't have the limitations of technology. In fact, he had some of the most advanced technology. I don't think that movie was good, but it wasn't as blow you away because he didn't have to hold back. He didn't have to work harder at the storytelling. I think that's a part of it.
Yeah, that's definitely a huge part of it, and I love it when directors and producers who do have limitless ability can actually step back and say, okay, what do we really need to work in here to make these characters fit? And I think that actually goes back to Guardians of the Galaxy. One of the things I really like about it is that the characters are so well defined that even though you have Rocket on screen as often as he is, there's so much that's able to be conveyed because they've really built this rapscallion with a good heart, and they've invested in it all the way along. And so it makes sense. And even when you see him snarl and smile at the same time, it works because they've bought it with all the other exposition. And
you forget that it's not a real, talking raccoon standing there. It's true. The noble rabbit is Thor calls them. So talking about like how real these dinosaurs was, I want to just tell another little story. So I was home from college when this movie came out, and sleeping on the couch at home because my mom had turned my bedroom into another room for something or other in the house. So I was sleeping on the couch at the time, and we came home from the movies, and I settled down to sleep, and I'm laying on the couch next to this big window, like the window at the front of the house, and as you know, when you're falling asleep, your mind does things to you. And I'm falling asleep, and all my mind is showing me is a giant T-Rex head lowering down in front of the window. Like, not that I was hallucinating, but I was imagining it. I'm like, oh, I am never getting to sleep tonight now. That's just, it was just so real. It was such a great experience of that. So
this movie had to cause a lot of nightmares over the years, I have to think. That,
yes.
It's T-Rex chasing kids, and that's got to ring true for a lot of people.
That's right. That's right. And one of the things that I think we kind of mentioned in passing was that Spielberg wanted the dinosaurs to be animals, not monsters. And in fact, it comes up. Grant says at one point that they're to Lex, they're not monsters. They're just animals doing what animals do. And I think that's important. It's the same sort of message, I think, as I think you mentioned. Jaws. Jaws is just a shark. I mean, although in one sense, Jaws was a shark that on a mission it was a little bit more malevolent than that, a little more intelligent than sharks usually are. But in the sense of it's an animal doing what an animal does, because wild animals are wild. And there's I think there's something to that. It makes it a better story than I think a little bit than some of the more recent Jurassic movies, which turn the dinosaurs into monsters on screen. What do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. Like, I think that's kind of Ian Malcolm's argument, and through the whole movie, the humans are just in the way. And especially you think of the last scene of this first one, that the T-Rex doesn't save them.
Right.
It just kind of happens to, it's like, oh, more dinosaurs to eat.
Right.
And I think that's just kind of it's part of the real message of the movie. By unleashing all these creatures, they don't know what's going to happen, and they're just kind of there. And I think you're right that a weakness of the newer movies, particularly, I haven't seen the newest Jurassic World, but the first one, really making some of those dinosaurs kind of characters, it falls flat because they're not your friends. They're dinosaurs. And so in this one, that it's kind of just humans having to deal with what nature does that makes the story. And we get to know the humans and are fascinated by the dinosaurs, but they don't need to be anything more than that because they're doing what they're meant to do.
Right.
They're not pets.
Yes.
No matter how cool they are, they're not pets. And that's one of the really neat scenes, I think, in the movie is when they've just escaped the T-Rex. They're sitting in the tree, and the Brachiosaur is right there in front of them, and Grant's trying to calm the kids down to convince them that everything's okay, and they finally start buying into it. And then right at that moment, it just sneezes on them.
Yeah, that's right.
And so they've gotten comfortable with it, and then there it is. There's the gross nature part of it.
One of the things that paleontologists have kind of they have a love-hate relationship with this movie, like a lot of people, like archaeologists do with Indiana Jones, and Navy pilots have with Top Gun, I suppose, which is at the same time that it ramps up interest in their field, it also conveys a lot of inaccuracies. And part of it that is that the movie dinosaurs are scientifically inaccurate. I mean, they're just, and not even just like because we've learned more in 20 years. At the time, they were inaccurate. The in-universe, the in-movie explanation is, well, that's because they were genetically manipulating them, throwing in frog DNA. So they were designing these as much as anything. But like one of the things that's often pointed out is that real velociraptors are not 6 feet tall. They were in fact like 1 to 2 feet tall. They were a lot like those chicken dinosaurs in Jurassic 2 from the beach at the beginning. They were much smaller, so less threatening, I guess.
Yeah, a 2-foot velociraptor is not scary.
But it's not far off either, because there are actual raptors that were that size. It's just when you call something a Utah raptor, it's probably not as intimidating as this very foreign term, that they had for it.
Yes, Utah raptor makes you think of, they're nice young dinosaurs coming to knock on your door, wearing ties and white shirts.
Exactly.
So that's the interesting little bit there. One of the things I kind of found out was who other actors that were considered for the roles. Harrison Ford was considered for the role of Dr. Grant. And it's
how interesting.
It's very interesting to watch the movie and to insert Harrison Ford into that role, and how he would have played it differently, just to kind of see. I mean, it would have worked. I think. Harrison Ford would have worked. Another very interesting casting choice. They considered Jim Carrey for the character of Malcolm.
Whoa.
Which would have been a disaster. I'm sorry, but Jim Carrey as Ian Malcolm would have been weird.
There's just Jeff Goldblum. It had to be
exactly.
Jeff Goldblum.
And then
cannot replace that role.
Yeah, exactly. But the even in the early '90s, Jim Carrey was still in his kind of wacky phase too. So
right.
I'm just not sure of that. And Robin Wright, who we know from House of Cards and other things, she was considered for the role of Ellie Sattler. Although Laura Dern was always Spielberg's first choice. Wayne Knight, who plays Nedry, who's also Newman from Seinfeld, he was cast by Spielberg right from the beginning based on his performance in Basic Instinct, which is a movie I haven't seen. But
I can see that. Yeah,
he saw Basic Instinct, Spielberg did, and stayed to the credits and wrote down his name. So that was he was chosen. And then the children, they interviewed a lot of kids. The boy didn't get a role in the Peter Pan, a Hook, with Spielberg because he was too young. But so he promised him a role in this. And then the actress who played Lex, she got it on the basis that during her audition, they asked her to scream. And she screamed so loud that Spielberg's wife came running from the other room where she'd been sleeping. And so she got the role based on the fact that she could wake up Spielberg's wife in the other room with her scream. So, just some funny, just little bits about the casting. So I think the kids were great. The boy who played Tim, he has gone on to some other things as a child actor. He may well indeed be acting as an adult, and I just don't recognize him grown up now. But I remember seeing him in a few other things after that. I don't know about whether the girl went on, but they both did very well for the roles that they were asked to play.
Yeah, it's always interesting when you I know when you read a lot about the trade, you hear how horrible it is to work with the children, and even with the recent success of Stranger Things, everyone was really surprised that the Duffer Brothers were willing to work with kids, and it was just because they didn't know that was that hard. And I read an interview with them about that, and they were like, yeah, everybody kept asking us why we thought that was a good idea, and we just didn't know any better. So I think sometimes you get lucky, and sometimes it can be a disaster, and it's got to be hard to pick, but they did a really good job with that role, with both of their roles.
It looks like,
but I have to say, Tim is like invincible.
Yes.
in that movie. Like, you watch how many times he should have died in that movie. And by the end, you see the haggard look on his face where he's just like trying to hold on to things.
When he says that line, well, we're back in the car again. The way he says it is so perfect. It was such a great delivery of that line, I got to say.
That's what I think is great with those two, is how funny they are. There's a lot of humor through the movie, but they really pull it off. And that's not always the case with child actors. And I think it really adds to the movie. Their delivery of these great little one-liners like that is wonderful.
So another little bit of background for the movie is the storm scenes were actually shot because they were filming in Hawaii, and they were hit by Hurricane Iniki during filming. And they incorporated some of the storm, some of the hurricane into some of the shots, especially like the some of the establishing shots that they have of the waves crashing against the shore and that sort of stuff. But they decided to make it part of the film. Unfortunately, it also prevented them from filming certain things. Like Samuel L. Jackson's character was supposed to die on screen, where he was chased down by the raptors, but that had to be dropped because the set was destroyed by the storm and some other things like that. So that changed the movie in several ways. But very interesting that that was part of it. So as for the movie itself, I felt like we talked a little bit about the theme of the movie, and a couple of the themes of this is the idea of man's hubris at playing God. I mean, that really seems to be at the heart of this movie, this idea of you can't play God. Malcolm kind of says, although I think he does bring up God at one point, but he doesn't. He kind of sometimes says nature or whatever. But he kind of says, like, once things are selected for extinction, that's their turn is over. You're not supposed to bring them back. To bring them to kind of mess with life this way, with nature this way, is to invite disaster. What do you think? I mean, is that really a theme, at least, for this movie?
Yeah, the line I always think about is right from the beginning when they're first driving in and Ellie picks a leaf. Well, maybe that's not it. Well, that happens, and then later she points out there are poisonous plants in this building.
Right.
You have them because they look good. And I think that really captured it, that it's all about entertainment. And that's not a bad aim, but just that, like you said, that hubris of thinking, well, we can, like you said before, we can do this, so we should. And
right.
That idea of everything is at our disposal, and whether it's Hammond doing it simply for the sheer joy of having it, or like the lawyer, is it Gennaro, who we're going to make so much money off of this. That's his immediate reaction to seeing living dinosaurs. And so that whatever the reason, it's dangerous. And I think that I like that neither of them is right. Even if Hammond is naive and idealistic about it, he's still wrong. It's still dangerous.
Right.
Right. I thought I was really struck, going back through and looking at it now, it's a Frankenstein tale with, just a very modern twist to it. And the monster that they make, just like Shelley's Frankenstein monster, was not truly a monster. It was a living thing that had its own motives and its own way of living. And you couldn't escape that, no matter how horrible the thing was. And that's a beautiful thing that comes through in the whole movie. And when you really sit down and watch it and look at all the pieces that they put together, it's such a good retelling of that tale.
Yeah, there's this. That's actually really good. It is a Frankenstein movie, because I hadn't thought of that before like that. But it is really it's a story. It's that old story of that is born out of a post-Enlightenment worldview. I'm kind of digging deep into my college philosophy classes here, but it's really kind of born out of that warning, during the Enlightenment, that when man thought, okay, we've killed, or as Malcolm says at one point, God creates dinosaurs, God destroys dinosaurs. God creates man, man destroys God, man recreates dinosaurs. And then the next line is, dinosaurs kill man. I mean, that's really kind of the end result of that. And it's sort of, this is the lesson that, when man thinks he can replace God, only disaster can result. And that's sort of what's happening here. There's also a little bit of the idea of a world passing away, so that, dinosaurs went extinct. Paleontologists are going extinct. That whole, we're out of a job. And don't you mean extinct? Which is actually, there was a real exchange between Spielberg and the head of the stop motion animation after they saw the CGI dinosaurs, by the way. So Spielberg said to the animator, "It looks like you're out of a job." And he said, in fact, don't you mean extinct? But there's that idea in fact, it's another through line from a lot of Spielberg's movies of a world passing away. And what's important? What are we losing with progress? I think that's a big part of what he's trying to say.
Yeah, and I like that. As high tech as everything is in that movie, because you go back and watch it now, and I think the 1930 or the 1990s really shows. 1993 really comes through in this movie.
Yes,
the Jeeps and all the different things that you're watching in it. it really, you see this kind of moving into the future and not really being sure of what we're getting into. And if, for anybody who's ever done any computer programming, Nedry's character is just a classic. Like everybody thinks this is the way computers work, and that's not how they work. You know, this is just such a ridiculous thing. Or when they go through and they hack their way back into the system, and there's like this incredibly bizarre graphical user interface to show the audience what's going on.
It's such a slow. This is a Unix system. I know this. No, it's not.
Not a Unix system at all.
It's like if you had to turn the security system on by that very slow cursor moving up the screen. It was so like yeah, that was funny. You're right. I mean, it was the advent of the computer age, like the modern computer age. I mean, we'd had computers for a long time, but you know, a character like Grant saying, "I don't do computers." I mean, there is no one today who, like a paleontologist, any type of academic, who could just say, "I don't do computers." I mean, you'd never get away with it today.
I think Lex's joy when they get in the Jeep, she's like, "An interactive CD-ROM," and I laughed out loud. That was a really impressive thing at that point in history, in 1993, to have a little computer screen in your Jeep. And looking back now, we're all carrying around much nicer computers in our pockets, but yeah, just being right on that edge.
Yeah, I mean, how many production cars out there right now just have a touchscreen interface in the car? I mean, it's just the thing. One of the things that Hammond keeps saying, it's a line he keeps repeating: "We've spared no expense." You know, that it's this idea that we're going all out. We put all our cards on the table. We're holding nothing back. The technology and in fact, the park is so, like, from a production design standpoint, the park was so well designed. You had the logo and you had the T-shirts and it felt like a Disney World with dinosaurs walking around. I mean, it was the production design was so good and so thorough. That it just felt like, yes, this is a theme park about to open. And that's one of the things that made Jurassic World a little satisfying, was you actually got to see the park open. Right. Of course, then the attraction started eating the guests, but still, you got to see it, you know, and the promise was there 20 odd years earlier.
I think it's also interesting, just like, this is probably the fulfillment of what Star Wars became, that they made I don't know how much money they made off of toys and merchandising, but this movie is made for it because they had the toys and the T-shirts in the movie already.
Yes, and lunch boxes and everything. Right. Mm-hmm. You actually mentioned the Unix system. I just was remembering all the old Macs that were running everything. I'm looking at them go, like, at the time they were the top of the line Macs. I'm like, oh, I remember those, and I used to do the school paper on that one.
It's so funny how fast things have changed since then, and it's interesting to watch movies and how they deal with some of the technology we have today, because just having had a sat phone at the time, they would have been fine. And
exactly,
they didn't have to go to some place to communicate with anybody. They could have picked up the sat phone and called out.
Right, they wouldn't have had to reboot the phone system. Well, right. one of the things I like to do is when I'm watching movies that aren't current, is you can always date movies from before 2008 and after 2008 by what, like, especially if they're movies in the 2000s, in this century, by what kind of cell phone they have. So if they have a flip phone or what they call a feature phone, it's definitely 2007, maybe early 2008. If they have an iPhone or other smartphone, it's 2008 plus. It's like after that. Like, it's very interesting how technology so quickly dates a movie these days, when much less than it used to. Like, you look at Back to the Future movies, you know that it's the 80s, but it doesn't, like, it could have been early 80s, late 80s, early 90s. It wasn't so dated, but very specifically. Whereas maybe it's just because we're living in the middle of it, but the technology can really date. You can not date as in make it old, but date as in give you a sense of when it was. So it's just very interesting. I wanted to quickly, before we wrap up, I wanted to talk about the music for one thing. again, John Williams at his best. John Williams he's the Mozart of our time. He just is. He's an amazing genius, and the music, soaring trumpets, that triumphal trumpet sound, the deep strings of the foreboding. I mean, the emotion that his music gives to this movie, it's one of the cast. It's one of the characters in the movie. Do you have? I don't know if either of you have particular feelings about the music, like I do.
I
could
love
just
it.
yeah.
I've actually been playing some of the music that inspired John Williams to my kids lately, and so like Carl Orff's The Planets, and I'll toy with them because I'll play a song and I'll ask, okay, who was it? And,
Right.
My kids are pretty good with composers, and so they've started to kind of pick up on the themes in them. And I was really stunned because the other day we got into a discussion about something, and then we started talking about music for one movie. And my son said, that wasn't John Williams, Dad. And I'm like, no, surely that was John Williams. And I think it was Pirates of the Caribbean. It might have been one of those. And I had said that it was, and he was like, no, that was someone else. And he started like telling me, what the difference was between the two. And I'm like, wow, that's amazing how much they can latch on to the composers like that of the movies that they watch.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it was James Horner, in fact. We were talking recently on Secrets of Star Trek. It's an upcoming episode. We haven't released it yet. But we were talking about Star Trek, the motion picture. And when the Klingons first appear on screen, the new Klingon music that goes with them is right out of The Planets, the wholesome planets. It's the Mars theme, and it's martial, warlike. And these great composers like Williams and Horner and Jerry Goldsmith, they're inspired by those who came before them. There's nothing new under the sun. I mean, and how they build on not only their own work that they've done before. Like, you could find themes in this from Star Wars or from Indiana Jones, but they also build on the great work of people that preceded them. And that is great that you're teaching them to appreciate the composers of the music, because I've always loved soundtracks. So that's a huge thing for me, to do that. So I'm trying to think of any other bits that we're going to talk about. We talked about the impact tremors in the cup of water. That great foreboding that he creates. I noticed for the first time the lawyer Gennaro, just before he dies, he's sitting on the toilet. He's not. People think he was using the toilet. He was hiding in there. So
there's the little joke that he's like wearing a suit jacket and shorts, I think is a really subtle and hilarious thing.
Yes, exactly. But he's sitting there praying the Hail Mary before the T-Rex chomps him. So hopefully he died in a state of grace because of it. Another iconic moment is the objects in the mirror are closer than they appear, with a big T-Rex head in it. I love that. That's another great scene. Must drive faster, like that whole, just so many great lines. I think I mentioned earlier how, when I always quote the clever girl, so there's just so many good moments in this movie that we love, that stay with you. So did I miss anything, or are there any notes that you guys had that you wanted to bring up before we were done?
I always think about the opening scene of them loading the raptors into that pen. Yeah. How darn scary it is, and I had an impact on me as a 10-year-old, certainly. Yeah. But I watched it today, and what a great opening, because everybody would have known what they're getting into, but just this idea of these really smart predators,
right?
And you don't see them at all, and just how I love that scene. I think it's such a great setting to put you in the right mood to see the rest of the movie.
Right. There will be a great line in the next, I think it's the next one. It might be the third one. The stay out of the high grass. That's one I always say to the kids when I need to mow the lawn. Stay out of the high grass. But the one of the things I thought was really good is how everyone forgets about the T-Rex at the end. When they're being chased by the velociraptors, like through the visitor center. We've totally forgotten about the T-Rex once they've gotten over that fence until it shows up. I mean, what a great use of that, of just kind of keeping it hidden, keeping it in your pocket until the end. And it comes out and it's that great scene of the banner floating down, the banner that says "When Dinosaurs Ruled the Earth," and it roars. So really, really great. Another character that's going to show up, by the way, again, is the character played by B.D. Wong, Wu, the geneticist, who here, he's like this nice guy. He's just this friendly scientist. Oh, he's not. No.
He's not. No.
We'll find out in Jurassic World what his real agenda is.
Yeah.
So, see, I'm just trying to think. Any other bits and pieces? Not really. I note that the visitor center control room has the strongest drop ceiling ever.
Yes.
That can hold the weight of
be able to hold the weight of a raptor through there. Yeah.
So I think that's it. And in the end, the lawyer and the insurance company were right. That's the message of the movie. That's really the message of the movie.
That's what it all comes down to.
Yes.
As they're flying away with the helicopter and the pterodactyls are around them, it's the insurance company was right.
Yes. Listen to your lawyer and the insurance company.
Yeah.
Well, as we see in Jurassic World, a park full of dinosaurs can never be safe. So anyway, well, I think I should wrap up. I do want to read a little bit of feedback from a previous Secrets of the Incredibles. We had a listener, Amy Flowers. She wanted to send us a note. So we had we talked about the Incredibles 2 and with Maria Johnson and Lisa Hendy, and Maria was recording in the midst of Hurricane Gordon, so she gets the prize for real trooper for podcasting. But Amy says to address Dom's query of the character of Win Dever, like why was he called Win Dever, what that meant. She says not him, but his sister Evelyn. The clue's in her name. Evelyn Dever, or Evil Endeavor, is what they're trying to say. So, and then she said it was a fun podcast and made me want to watch this wonderful movie all over again. People have commented that Bob, Mr. Incredible, his less than immediate enthusiasm for Helen, Elastigirl's new job, makes him a bad husband, but I totally disagree. He has a human reaction and rises above that selfish first reaction to be supportive and happy for her. It makes him a more complex, interesting character. I just wanted to bring that point up. Again, thanks for a great show. I'm glad Maria is okay after the hurricane. And she adds, I agree, Edna Mode is the best. Everybody loves Edna. She is the best. Thank you, Amy, for that.
I haven't seen that one yet. I'll have to watch that.
Oh, those are good.
It's good. It's good. It's one of those cases of the sequel, not quite the first one, because the first one was new and fresh and amazing, but the sequel is good and it's worth watching. So definitely. Great. Yeah. So that's it from us, folks. Tell us what you think of Jurassic Park. What did you think of what we had to say about Jurassic Park? Are we on the money? Are we off base? Let us know. So you could do that by going to sqpn.com, sqpn.com. I say it too fast, I know. sqpn.com/secrets, or go to the StarQuest Facebook page. Just search for SQPN on Facebook and leave us some feedback, or send us an email to secrets@sqpn.com. We'll put links in our show notes on the website. And be sure to subscribe to this podcast. If you're not subscribed, be sure to subscribe on iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, TuneIn. And remember to write a review, like, comment, share. That helps us grow, reach a bigger audience, more people. It helps us in our mission, which is to explore the intersection of faith and pop culture through podcasts. And so by doing that, you're helping us do that more. So until next time, Thomas Sanjurjo, thank you for joining me and sharing the secrets of Jurassic Park.
Thanks for having me.
And Father Michael Gossett, thank you as well.
It's a pleasure. I love this movie so much.
And once again, I'm Dom Bettinelli. Thank you for listening to the secrets of movies and TV shows on StarQuest. And remember, clever girl.